So let's proceed with the plane area that concerns with the polar coordinate system. So in the introduction, so we're going to graph polar equations, and then afterwards, after knowing how to graph such equations, is we're going to solve the different plane areas that is bounded by these polar equations. Okay, so before we go into the graphing aspect, so let me give you a quick review on the polar equations. So actually, it's just related with the rectangular coordinate system. So again, if you don't have this one in your high school or in your senior high, so probably you have to do some catching up. So let's say this one is your x and y axis, and then let's say this is your point here. So this point is being defined by distance x and then by distance y. So this point may be referred to as coordinates x and y units. Okay. So in polar aspect, instead of this point being x and y, so it is being measured by radial distance and an angular displacement. Okay, so meaning in polar equations, this one is r and theta. So again, r is the radial distance, or probably if you want it to be in simple terms, the radius, the radius. And this one is the angular displacement, or simply the angle, diba? Angle from x going towards the radial distance. Okay, so if you want to relate your x and y with the polar coordinate system, so all you have to do is to use Pythagorean theorems and other trigonometric functions to relate such equations or terms. So let's say you're going to use Pythagorean theorem. So r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared. And then r is equal to the square root of x squared plus y squared. Okay. So if you want to look for the angle, so all you have to do is to use trigo function, tangent. That would give you y over x. And then isolating theta, this would give us arctangent y over x. I'm sorry, y over x. So probably these two equations are used in converting rectangular going towards polar. But you have r, then you now have theta. So if you want to revert back to the rectangular system, so you may try to use again another set of trigo functions. So let's say starting off with cosine. So cosine theta is equal to x over r, adjacent over the hypotenuse. So isolating x variable, so you now have x equals r cosine theta. Okay, so next is the sine function. So this would give us y opposite side, r the hypotenuse. So this would give you y equals r sine theta. So these equations would be used to convert polar going back to rectangular. So you have x, then you have y variable. So that's how you relate your two sets of system, rectangular against polar. So again, this one is just a quick review on how to deal with rectangular and polar coordinate system. So let's now go to the main point of this discussion, which is the graphing aspect So probably the graphing aspect is a bigger part of this topic because again, since you'll be using the calculator from now on, so you just have to plug in the equation using your calculator, diba? And then you just have to wait for the answer. So um, probably most of the part here would be the graphing aspect since again, you need to manually graph your equations in the exam. Okay, so again, this one is rectangular, and then the other one is an example of a polar graph. So this one is polar. So also notice that the angles here are in pi over 6. So um, our units must be in radians. It should not be in degrees. Okay. Okay, so let's try to sketch these equations. So up until number 3 lang. Okay, I think the number 3 will give us a negative value and a negative value in your R will have a different method of graphing. Okay, so let's start with R equals 2 times 1 plus sine theta. Okay, so in tabular method in your calculator, so let me write first the table here so that we can verify the answer directly. So starting from 0 to, let's say, pi over 6, pi over 3. So the increments here is in 30 degrees or in pi over 6. Let me write first and then prepare your calculator. Okay, if I'm answer, madugay ito sa math. Okay, so for example, this one is your table. So in your tabular method in your calculator, so before you use that particular mode, so make sure that your calculator is in radians mode. So dapat naka letter R na siya diya na R. So to do that, I think it's mode shift. And then you just have to press number 4 siguro to for radians. So try um, manipulating that particular mode right now. So after you have set it to radian mode, dapat naka-R na siya. So if it's D sa inyong calculator, ang D represents degrees. So meaning all angles should be in degrees. So if R siya, all angles should be in radians. So muna siya ang meaning sa inyong calculator. So after obtaining radian mode, so go to mode 7, mode, and then 7. And I think this one is the table mode. Then what will appear would be f of x and then equals, diba? So you still have to plug in the value of the equation. So again, the default variable of the calculator is always the variable x. So instead of using r equals 2 plus sine theta, so we're going to use f of x. Diba? So muna siya itong r is equal to 2 times 1 plus sine and then alpha x. So muna siya sa calculator. So that's what you're going to plug in. 2 times 1 plus sine alpha x and then equal sign. So after that one, after you have plugged in the equation, it is going to ask for a starting value. So start and then question mark. So what you have to do here is the starting value would be 0, the angle 0, so 0, and then it would ask for an end part, end. So the end part would be 2 pi, or 360 degrees. So after that one is, it would ask for a step. So steps, yeah. So the step means an interval. The interval going towards the end. From start to end, what would be the interval? So in our so in our case, it's the 30-degree angle. So in radian form, that would be pi over 6. Then after inputting the step equal sign, then it will give you this table. Okay, so try reciting the, so it's theta, and then it's in the calculator, it's x and then f of x. So muna magawa sa calculator. Sige, so try to recite the values. Okay, so Michaela,
Yes, sir. Sakto rin ni sir nga sa akong calculus, sir, murag naka-decimal form ang akong x.
decimal form.
Yes, sir. Murag pag-input nako sa pareha gali na, sir, sa end nga gitupay nako siya, sir, kay iyang gi decimal form gihimo niya og 5 point something something, sir.
Okay na siya. Sige daw, value daw for f of x. Value for r.
Sige, sir. It's 2
Sige.
2 3 3.732 4 3.732 gihapon, and then 3 2 1 0.2679 0 0.2679 1 and then 2 the answer.
Okay, so thank you for that one, Michaela. So since we now have the values, all you have to do is to plot them in this one, this polar graph. So don't worry if you don't have any, let's say if you don't have any polar graph in the exam. So probably you just have to create the x and y plane, and then you just have to draw lang siguro ganing mga angles at 60. So I think what you need here is a protractor. So for the zero aspect, this one is the 2, di ba? So 2. Okay. And then 3 pi over 6. So 3 is on this point, di ba? Then going towards pi over 6. So this one is your 3. Then 3.7, this would be 2, 4, 6. This would be the point here. Okay, and then 4. Then it repeats itself, di ba? So 3.7, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then 0.26, di ba? And then 0, then 0.26, and then 1, and then 2 again. Okay? So that's how you plot your values. So mas dali siya compared sa inyong kuan, di ba? Rectangular system wherein you have to know whether it's a parabola, it's a hyperbola, it's an ellipse, a circle. So probably that's the difficult part in the rectangular system. But for polar, you just have to plug in values going from 0 towards 360 degrees, or 0 to 2 pi. So now connect the graph. So you start off with 0. So my graph may not be accurate, but Sorry, kasama na siya. That's the idea. Okay, then you now have the graph. And then this one is the graph coming from Desmos. So you just have to, again, you cannot use Desmos in the exama, but Desmos is just a tool in verifying your graph. So dili siya, dili siya allowed in the exam. All right. So questions for um, the first graph before we proceed? Or do you have confusion using the table method? Okay, so I guess there's none. Okay, so I hope you are able to use the table method now. So for number two, let's try this equation. So r equals 2 times 1 minus, I think it's 1 minus cosine theta. So let me check. Yes, it's 1 minus cosine theta. Okay, so again, we have to use the table method again. So while I write the table method on the left side, so try to use the table method. I write the different angles. So I'll ask for the answer after I finish writing the angles. Okay, so anyone who has the answer?
Ako, sir. Try ko, sir.
Sige. Kyle?
Uh, 0,
0 and then?
0.2679,
Okay.
1,
Sige, next.
2, 3. 3.732,
And then next.
4. Then 3.732 na sad. 3,
And then
2,
2.
1. 0.2679
And then last is 0.
and then 0.
Okay, so this one is correct. So upon graphing, so again start with 0 angle. So it's 0. It's at the center. And then next is 0.26 or 0.27. So 2. So it's probably at this point here. Then 1. And then 2. And 3. 3.7. So 2, 4, 6, 7. 4. 3.7. 3. 2. And then 1. Then 2.67. Okay, so that would be the graph. So again, always start with 0 and then going towards 360 degrees. Okay, so that's the graph. Then this one is coming from Desmos. So again, I'm not super strict with the smoothness of the curve as long as you have provided me with the correct details in the graph. Okay, so let's try number 3. Okay, it's getting simple na, diba? So R is equal to negative 2 sine theta. So, so again, when I write the table, try to get the values. Okay, so anyone?
I'll take this one, sir.
Sige.
The first value is 0,
0,
-1,
-1.
-1.732,
Okay, next.
-2, then -1.732 na pod,
Okay,
-1, 0, lah, kuwang lagi ho. Ada deh. Balik 1, 1.732, 2, 1.732, 1, and 0.
okay, so thank you for that one, Zeldrick. So this time is since we are now having negative values, and I think it's a special case if you have a negative value for your R. So let's try graphing the negative parts. So we start with 0. So 0 is 0. So in pi over 6 or in 30-degree angle, you have -1. So normally we try to trace it here, and this should be our point, diba? Since it's 1. But since it's -1, so this is not our point, but you have to go to the opposite direction of pi over 6, which is on the other side, since it's negative, diba? So still on the same line of sight of pi over 6, but it's on the opposite end since it's -1. So meaning our first point is in this location. So muna siya if negative value ay inyong R. So let's say 1.7. So 1.7 is from pi over 3. This would be the distance in the positive direction. Diba? So this one is 1.7. So again, since we are in the negative value, so muna siya ka ng x-axis, diba? On the left side is negative, on the right side it's positive. So meaning you just have to extend this one on the other side, going towards 1.7, negative 1.7. So muna siya. Then -2. So +2 here on pi over 2. This one is -2. Positive 1.7, let's say in this part. So negative 1.7 is on this area. Okay, so -1 probably at this point here. Then the opposite side is here. then going back to 0, and then 0 and then 1. So positive 1 is still the same point, 1.72 the same point, 2 the same point, 1.72 the same point, so on and so forth, going back to 0. So connecting now the dots. So mura siyang piatos, di ba? Na. Okay? So this is our graph. And then it's actually a circle. But di lang siya super accurate because we're just using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Diba? And I think the more number of points, the better the accuracy of the curve. Okay, so again, if you have a negative value, you just go to the opposite direction of that particular angle. So just take it in a aspect of or in a perspective of the x plane, diba? So on the opposite side, it's the negative angles, the negative values. On the right side, it's the positive value. So whether the angle is changing, so all you have to do is go to the opposite direction of 0, and that gives you the negative value. Okay. So for example, this one is, let's say 3. So this one is 3 r and theta, diba? Pi over 6. So let's say I'll go on this direction. So this one may be represented as 3 and then 7 pi over 6, or it could be represented as negative 3 and then pi over 6. Nah. So that's how you interpret your points. All right. So for numbers 4, 5, and 6, I'll just leave this one to you. So this one is 1 minus 2 cosine theta. So r is equal to 1 minus 2 cosine theta. So you can answer this one on your own later to verify the graph. So for number 5, it's r squared 25 cosine 2 theta. And this one is the graph. And then for number 6, this would be r equals 1 all over 1 minus 2 sine theta. And then this one is the graph. It's a hyperbola. Okay, so since we know how to graph our equations, let's proceed with the main discussion, which is the area. So area with polar coordinates under a single curve. So meaning it's under only one equation. So it's only under one polar equation. So if you try to look at the formula, so that would be the area is equal to the integral of 1/2 r squared d theta from alpha going to beta. So if you try to take out a representative strip, so murag pina vertical strip pa or horizontal strip, but this one is just a probably a cone nga strip, diba? A representative strip. Okay, so the tip of the cone, the one that is touching the tip of the cone would be the r function. Okay, that would be your r angle. I mean your r equation in the formula. And if you try to isolate this one, diba, mura siya og kanang cone, diba? Or let's say In the circle, more siya katong finding the area of the sector, di ba? Katong ice cream. So probably if you try to recall the formula, it's the area is equal to 1/2 r squared theta, di ba? R squared sine theta mo siguro to. So I forgot. Basta mo na siya. So it's similar to the equation given, di ba? So another thing to take note in the formula is that you have alpha and then beta. And take note that it's always measured counterclockwise. So alpha going to beta. So alpha must be lesser than beta always. So that, for example, um, let's say 30 degrees, or let's say pi over 6, going towards 90 degrees, or let's say 2 pi. Let's say pi day, pi over 2, pi over 4, 4 day, 4, pi over 4. Diba? So, lain sa kayo if magsugod tag 90 degrees, diba? Then going towards 30 degrees. So, that's not the case. So, it's always counterclockwise direction, coming from a smaller angle going towards a larger angle. So alpha going to beta. So alpha should be lesser than beta. All right. So this is the formula, and then all you have to do is to memorize the formula and then try to determine which angle you're going to use, which formula. So of course, since it's single curve, so probably the given equation is just the formula, diba? So one line. Okay. So let's try number one first, and then so I'm going to write the graph or show the graph directly, but we need to get the tabular method first, or the values for the table. So when I'm writing the values, so again, try to use your calculator. So again, the purpose of me writing the values of the table is that it's important later on when we're trying to determine alpha and beta. And it's easier for us to look at the values in the table. So again, while I'm writing the angles, try to answer this one in your calculator. Okay, so values for r in this equation. Okay, so any takers? Okay, so Michaela again.
Answer 6,
Okay, 6,
5, 5.4641.
5.
Or 5.4641, sir.
Okay, and then next is
And then 4, and then 2, and then 0, and then negative 1.464, negative 2, negative 1.464, 0,
0.
and then 2, 4,
Then
5.4641, sir, and then 6.
okay. So thank you for that one, Michaela. So again, these are the points, diba? So if you try to plug in the points here, so these would be the points. Um, okay, so after graphing, so determine the area of the inner loop. So inner loop of the equation r equals 2 plus 4 cosine theta. So the loop that it's referring to is this loop here. Okay. So again, if you try to take a representative strip, so it's touching just one equation, diba? So obviously, okay. Also take note that it's the same rules for the rectangular system. So the strip must be consistent all throughout your um, your bounded region. So for example, from starting from 0 here, I'm going to place my strip downwards. So it's still touching the same graph. Ba? So dapat consistent siya all throughout your bounded region. So especially in the next formula wherein we have to deal with two different sets of equations. So probably this applies more to that formula compared to a single curve. Okay, so the formula is now area is equal to 1 half r squared d theta from alpha to beta. So again, we need to determine where the inner loop is found in the table. So again, it starts with 0 and then it ends with 0 again, diba? So the starting point is 0 here, diba? Then negative 1.46, negative 2, negative 1.46, and then it ends with 0 again. So meaning this one would be our alpha, and then this one would be our beta. So super simple, diba? Then you just have to write it in your calculator and then apply it in radian mode. Okay, so cosine theta, d theta, and again, this one is from 2 pi over 3 going towards 4 pi over 3. And then the answer would be, so ano na siya ka-simple, di ba? Okay, you don't have to deal with the integration process. Okay, so answers, anyone? So probably it will take some time for the calculator, but I think another tip would be to simplify the equations first. So at that, I think in that manner, you'll be able to help the calculator with solving the problems, diba? So that's the same for katong before na if it deals with radical expressions, probably it will take some time, diba? So try simplifying the equations first. Pero if you don't want to simplify it, so pwede rasad, but probably it will be a bit longer compared with the simplified version. All right, so what's the answer? Okay, so anyone?
Negative 1.37, sir. Why ako nakuha, sir?
It's negative, so it's positive. There's no negative area.
Okay, sir. Basta nabali ra ako pag-input, sir.
Sige,
Wait lang,
try
sir.
daw balik.
Kuan, sir.
Mo sa nakuha na, sir.
Negative,
2.17, sir.
it's
2.17, sir.
2.17. So this one is the answer. So I don't know why it's negative in your part, but dapat it should be positive. So again, take note that it should be in radian mode. Dapat naka-R na inyong kuan calculator. It should be letter R.
Excuse me, sir.
Mm.
Ang kuan, sir, kay ang sa presentation naman, sir, kay wala na square ang 2
Okay.
plus 4
So
cos
kani siya
theta.
squared.
I think mo na.
Sige. So squared na siya dapat. So ang answer is okay. So dapat squared na siya. So sorry about that one. So it should be 1/2 2 plus 4 cosine theta squared. Then the answer should be 2.17.
Nakuha na, sir.
Okay, that's good. All right, so I think that's as simple as it goes for the single curve. So since it's only one equation, so you don't have to deal with other equations. Just have to plug it in your calculator. And I think the problem would be identifying the alpha and the beta aspect. All right, so this would be the solution. So again, take note that you don't have to deal with this stuff anymore because you are going to use your calculator. So again, in this solution, notice that the angles here are being solved using um, by letting r equals to 0, but probably in my aspect here, it's difficult for me to comprehend because probably it's difficult for you also because why do we need to make r equals to 0 and then have these values afterwards, diba? So why set it to 0? Why not set it to other values, diba? So especially if you don't know the graph yet, so what about if we're going to set it to 0 or unsa? So kaniya is not na timingan lang it goes through the origin, diba? That's why it's 0. And it's a common point as well, diba? So probably the safest thing to do is to create your table lang jud. So kato with 30 degrees increment or pi over 6 increment. All right, so let's now go to two curves. Um, okay, so this time it's bounded by two curves, two equations, the red and the blue portions. So again, if I try to write a strip here, the outer portion is always red, and the inner portion is always blue. Diba? So again, it's the same rules sa katungkuan, vertical and horizontal strip. So if I try to place it here on the far left, the upper portion is still red, the lower portion is still blue. And again, if I try to place it here on the far right end, the upper is still red, the lower is still blue. And again, the formula is similar to a circle, di ba? Katong pinadonut na kuan, di ba? So again, if you're trying to determine the area of the ring, di ba? So usually it's pi times r outer squared minus r inner squared, di ba? That would be the formula. So it's a similar version, but we don't have any pi here. So it's a sector, it's a bigger sector minus a smaller sector. And then it equates to the ice cream, di ba? Maginana siya nga pag-explain, okay? So that's why it's 1/2 r outer squared minus minus r inner squared. So ang napuno lang is another equation. So it's similar to the single curve equation, but this time since we have it's bounded by two curves, so you just have to minus the smaller kwan, area of the curve, diba? All right. So let's try to answer this problem. So again, I'm going to give you the graph, but this time r over 2 is since r over 2 is just a constant, so meaning it is constant all throughout the equation. So 2, 2, 2, 2, and then so on and so forth. So it's a circle, diba? So for r equals 3 plus 2 sine theta, so we don't have any values for that one. Sorry. So again, I'm going to write here the table. So again, try to solve it first in your calculator para at least now may muscle memory on how to use the table method. Okay, so just fill in lang sa others. Okay. Ako lang siyang i-estimate. 4. Start with 0. Madini, no? So 4 and then 3 day. So just fill in with the other values sa kanang na yung mga decimal places. So starting with 3 and then 4. And then this one is I don't know the value here. This one is probably 5. Then 4 point something. 4 and then 3. So 2. Then this point here, I don't know. This one probably is 1. Okay, so just for pi over 3, what's the value for pi over 3? So 4 point something na siya. Hello.
Answer 4.732.
So 4 point. And then the other one is still 4.732.
4.732 lang gihapon.
Sige, so for pi over 3, 4 pi over 3.
Answer
1.27.
1.26794.
1.2679. Then this one is 1.2679. Okay. So If you can see, since the other equation is 2, so the points of intersection would be in this location, di ba? Okay, so 2 and then going towards 2. Okay, so these are the points of intersection. Okay, so the next part would be to determine the area. So determine the area that lies inside r equals 3 plus 2 sine theta. That's the red graph. So inside kuno, di ba? So inside the red area. But outside r equals to 2. So outside the blue area. So the area of interest, so let me just change the color lang para mas makita siya. So the area would be this portion here gani siya. So ako lang kuris-kuris lang ako para. Okay, so that's the area. So again, according to the rule, at any point in the bounded region, it must touch the same equation, di ba? So let's say I'm going to place it on the far right. Then let's say at the middle part. Then let's say at the far left end. Okay, so take note that it's touching the same area, di ba? And the outer one is still the red, and the inner part is the blue one. So same goes on the far right. Outer is red, inner is blue. Same goes for the leftmost end. Outer is red, inner is blue. Okay, so we can now proceed with the formula. So the area is equal to 1/2. So r outer squared minus r inner squared d theta from alpha to beta. Okay, so our problem now is our alpha and our beta. So again, since we know that the points of intersection is these points here, 7 pi going towards 11 pi. But notice that 11 pi going towards 11, 7 pi over 6 going towards 11 pi over 6 would be in this direction, di ba? And it's not covering the area. So to cover the area, we must start with this point, the 11 pi over 6, going towards 7 pi over 6, which covers the entire area. But our concern here is that our alpha must be lesser than beta, di ba? And it cannot be that 11 pi over 6 will be alpha. So instead of 11 pi over 6, we get its negative counterpart, which is negative pi over 6, so that it can be applied as an alpha angle. Okay, para lesser na siya, di ba? So you now have negative pi over 6. So again, you always measure the area counterclockwise, di ba? So even though that you know the points of intersection is 7 pi over 6, always take note the direction of the area, di ba? Kung asa siya magsugod. Okay, and then 1/2, and then we're going to have outer is the red one, 3 plus 2 sine theta squared minus 2 squared and then d theta. Then after this one is you just have the answer right away. Okay, so what's the answer?
Positive 24.19 akong nakuha, sir.
So it's 24.19. So again, mga 3 lines siya, di ba? Then you have the answer because you don't have to go through the manual computation of the manual process of integration. So I think all you have to do is to present me with the table and then the graph and then the formula, then your value here and then the answer. Okay, so this would be, I'm sorry. So this would be the solution. So again, it's negative pi over 6 because we are measuring counterclockwise. So again, you don't have to go through this trouble anymore because you are going to use your calculator. So questions for the first item, let's say the second item rather. All right, so there's no question, so let's proceed. So the same problem, but this time it's outside the red one, but inside the blue graph. So outside and inside the blue. So outside the red and then inside the blue part. So this would be the area. So again, just try to look at the recording later if you want to go back to the values of the table. So this should be our points of intersection. And then again, we measure in a counterclockwise direction. So this would be our alpha and this would be our beta. So again, to verify that if you can use the formula, so far left end, middle part, and then the rightmost end. So of course you don't have to write these 3 lines. Yeah, you can verify it using your visual kuan lang. So you may write one strip lang siguro, but for the left and rightmost end, you can verify it visually. So outer is blue, inner is red. Outer is blue, inner is red. Okay, so you can now use the formula. So again, that would be 1/2 r outer squared minus r inner squared d theta from alpha to beta. And then this one would be, so again, since we are now measuring counterclockwise, so 7 pi over 6 now, and then 11 pi over 6. So see the difference kanina sa mga angles, diba? So this one is 2 squared, the outer graph. The inner graph would be now the red one, 3 plus 2 sine theta squared d theta. Then you now have the answer. So ano na siya ka-simple, di ba? Okay, so what's the answer?
4.39, sir.
4.39. So let's try to check if it's 4.39. Probably it's kuwag siya divided by 2 siguro. So let's try to check our equation again.
Ang 1/2 sir nawala.
Nawa diri 1/2 day. Kuwang siya 1/2 day. Sige, sige. Ato ana sa nung sa. So kuwang
2.19 na, sir.
so kuwang siya 1/2. So this would be 2.9 2.19, no?
Yes, sir.
So 2.19. Okay, so kana siya 3 lines ra. And this would be the answer. Okay, so that's for the answer for this type of area na set. So what if we go to another problem? So it's an area between um, inside both um, r equals 3 plus 2 sine theta, so inside, and then inside this one also, the blue one. So this would be the area, diba? The entire area. So if you want to verify it using the graph, the strip, so notice that this one is now a single curve, diba? It's only touching the blue part in the upper quadrant. The blue part. Then the other one would be on the lower part is the red graph. So it's not consistent, diba? Yeah, it keeps on changing, diba? It's not consistent all throughout. So to do this, I think you have to do a different approach in solving this um, problem. So you have to think outside the box for you to be able to solve this type of problem. So probably you might want to solve it first using um, the area of the circle. So you use a single curve here, area of r equals to 2, and then subtract it with the area that we have found earlier, diba? Area coming from example number 3. So pwede na siya, diba? So we can do that as well. So another method would be to determine the area of the red graph, entire area of r equals 3 plus 2 sine theta, and then subtract it with the area that we have solved in example number 2. So kani siya example number 3. So meaning kani siya example number kani siyang dako is the limakon, kani siya minus katong murag pahak nga limakon, di ba? Ana. And it gives you the answer of katong kanina lang siya, di ba? Katong mo fit dire. Muna siya. So same goes for this area here. So area of the circle minus kaning murag wavy line sa example number 3, and it gives you the same answer. Di ba? So think outside the box if ever the formula cannot be applied in in the problem. Diba? So mura na siya kanang thinking outside the box. So how do you solve the area of the donut? So whole area minus the smaller area. Diba? You get the area of the ring. So murag ina na siyang aspect. So you have to think outside the box. So again, So since we are not able to use the formula, since it cannot be used because it's not consistent all throughout, and again, it's a single curve, di ba? Blue and then red. Dili siya two curves nga equation. So again, you have to go through other means in solving the area. So this would be the answer. So kana siya. So simplified version lang na siya, but again, um, so may siya circle. Then coming from example number 3 is katong murag smile ba kanang sa ubos. Then area of the limakon katong dako nga area. Then minus um ana siya. Okay? So you get the point. So any questions or clarifications? So this would be your problem set, and again, these are the answers. So I think I set the assignment on a far date as a due date for this one, but at least you can enjoy your long weekend. So probably if you're from Central Visayas, so probably there's no the long weekend will probably be at our homes kay due to the typhoon, di ba? Murag bad weather pa ana. Nga di pa kabiyahe kay walay barko ana. Okay, so this would be the problem set, and then any questions before we end our session? Okay, so I think there's no question. So I think that would be it for this meeting. So we'll probably meet by Wednesday next week. Okay, para you can enjoy your long weekend up until Monday lang siguro ana. So we'll just discuss a new topic on Wednesday, which is about centroid of areas. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Fine, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank